Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I want to talk about the racial wealth gap. I'm going to read an article from the Brookings Institute and break this down for you and explain it to you on the Black Financial Channel in just 1 second. Okay, guys. So here's the deal. The racial wealth gap is something that has been discussed quite a bit, and a lot of people have a lot to say about it. A lot of politicians might acknowledge it temporarily, and then kind of go back to doing whatever they do when they're ignoring Black people like they normally do. And so, what I'm going to do is actually break down some of this racial wealth gap issue for you guys. I'm going to read some components to a Brookings Institute article and then kind of explain a little bit about the racial wealth gap. We've alluded to it, but I haven't done an actual podcast on the topic, and I'm going to keep this actually short. So before we move forward, let's do our ritual. Everybody who is Black first, put hashtag B1 in the chat. Hashtag B1 means you're Black first. That hashtag can be used anywhere on social media to participate in the conversation with other people who put the Black community first. So put your hashtag B1 in the chat. Crystal Mendoza, hey Gabe, hey Uma, good to see you. All right, so here we go. Okay, so this article, I'm going to pull this up on my other screen. It's written at brookings.edu by Kristen McIntosh, Emily Moss, Ryan Nunn, and Jay Shambaugh. So here's what it says. A close examination of wealth in the U.S. finds evidence of staggering racial disparities. At 171,000, the net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a Black family, which is $17,150 in the year 2016. Gaps in wealth between Black and white households reveal the effects of accumulated inequality and discrimination, as well as differences in power and opportunity that can be traced back to this nation's inception. The Black white wealth gap reflects a society that has not and does not afford equal opportunity to all its citizens. So, what I want to do is actually just look at that first sentence here and break some of this down in terms of the language. Sometimes if you try to solve a problem and you start with the wrong assumptions, then you're not going to be able to solve the problem at all. Give me a yes or no if you think that whatever America's been doing, whatever politicians have been doing to solve the racial wealth gap has been working. Give me a yes or no if you believe that their solutions have been beneficial to Black people. Give me a yes or no. Yes or no. Put it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and say that the answer is no. If you look at the data, basically the racial wealth gap, if you go across time, the racial wealth gap is about as wide today as it was in 1968. In 1968, that was when we were led to believe that we'd made a lot of progress, that the civil rights movement, had been in full effect, that Black people had finally arrived, and we had overcome. Now, if you listen to this article, they speak on this idea. They use a lot of buzzwords in this piece. It's a good article, but they use some buzzwords that I actually want to challenge a little bit. So I'm going to read this. They said gaps in wealth between Black and white households revealed the effects of accumulated inequality and discrimination, as well as differences in power and opportunity. So three words I want to focus on are discrimination, power, and opportunity. Discrimination, power, and opportunity. Also, the last part, the Black white wealth gap reflects a society that has not and does not afford equal opportunity to all of its citizens. So, this is where a more powernomics oriented philosophy differs from traditional discussion, traditional failed policy. When you talk about accumulated inequality, that part I can agree with. There's no problem with that. But discrimination and differences in power and opportunity, the reason that those words are applicable to this particular issue is because the number one reason that Black people can't have the same wealth as everyone else is because of the way integration was done in the first place. When you were integrated into America, you were not integrated as equal partners in the system. You were not integrated into America in a way that would elevate you as a community to the status of those who benefit from capitalism. You were integrated as a commodity. You were integrated to strengthen the capitalist system that already existed, that already benefited whites. And it didn't benefit all whites, it benefited wealthy whites. So if you imagine you've got American capitalism before black people were invited, right? Before we were allowed to go spend our money at white people's stores and all this other stuff. And you had the working class white folks, the majority, and then you had the elite, which say it's the top 10, top 20% people that actually have wealth. Well, they integrated you, and imagine if they had this room, and you got the working class white people in one half of the room, and then the elite white people in the other half of the room, and they say we want to integrate, we want to bring black people into our room. So they bring you in, but they don't let you into the side where the elite people are. They bring you into the working class side. They bring you into the side of the group of people who serve as the mules for capitalism. The same way you have a drug mule that brings dope across the border. Well, you got human mules in capitalist systems. Black people were integrated into the working class of America. The working class are the individuals who support the businesses, who buy from the businesses that make the billionaires richer, who pay rent to the landlords, who go and also support sustain the businesses or buy consumer products, right? So you were brought in to be a consumer, you were brought in to be a worker, you were brought in to be a renter. You were not brought in to be the landlord, you were not brought in to be the business owner, you were not brought in to be the producer. Do you follow what I'm saying? Please give me a yes or no in the chat if you get what I'm saying. This is going to go over a lot of people's heads. A lot of people won't get it. Do you get what I'm saying? Give me a yes or no. Okay, Blake says preach. Thank you, Blake. I appreciate the fact that you're hearing what I'm saying. And by the way, if you're looking for solutions, we're very solution oriented. I have a PhD in finance, so I've studied this stuff. I know this stuff very well. So you were brought in to be the worker. You were not brought in to be the boss. So let's keep going. Go focus on those three words: discrimination, power, and opportunity. So when you integrate it into the system that already has rules and parameters in place, it already has cultural norms, it already has a value system, it already has institutions that are run by the elite. You don't get to run any of those institutions. Your institutions died when you decided that integration was better for your community than continuing to do what you were doing. So you suffer discrimination because in any system, the majority group is going to make the rules of that system. I don't care what the system is. If I'm a black business owner and I create a black owned business and I go hire a bunch of black people and I hire all my friends, all my neighbors, all my little cousin them, right? I hired all my relatives, and then a white boy comes in and works for our company. Well, the white boy is not going to have equal opportunity. The white boy is going to either have to adjust to black culture, he's going to have to get the hell out. The white kid is going to be the victim of discrimination, not because there's something inherently fundamentally problematic with him being white, but because he's in an environment where he's outnumbered. And so for many black people, when you chose to integrate, when you chose to commit yourself to being involved with the system that's run by people who happen to be the descendants of your historical oppressors, you played yourself. You put yourself in a situation where you're surrounded by other people who then have the ability and the right to discriminate against you and to also have a power imbalance against you where they could give themselves opportunities and not give you opportunities. There's nothing about black and white that naturally makes that happen. If I were to go to China and I were to go try to do business in China, give me a yes or no. Do you think the Chinese people would discriminate against me? Or do you think Chinese people would treat me the same as if I had yellow skin? Do you think the Chinese people would treat me the same as a Chinaman, or you think they would treat me like an American who didn't really belong? Or maybe give me the scraps. They might say, hey, you know what? We'll benefit from you, but we're not going to reward you. We're not going to take care of you like you're one of us. We just like I tell you guys to be B1. Well, in China, they are C1. China first. That's it. You can either come in and help out or you can stay out. So also the last little piece they mentioned in this article is they said the black-white wealth gap reflects a society that has not and does not afford equality of opportunity to all citizens. I believe the term equality, I believe it's a nice concept. It's a nice idea to believe that we can have a country that's going to have equal opportunity. But I'm going to ask you, I'm going to politely ask you to consider removing that term from your vocabulary, just killing that fantasy altogether. America is not a country that's going to be built for equality of opportunity. It's just not. I mean, sure, you can make it more equal, and I hope that they do. But America, there has never been any point in American history since this country was founded. You can go back hundreds and hundreds of years. There has never been a point where America was a country that gave equal opportunity to all citizens. So effectively, when they get you using terms like equality and believing that equality is your solution to the wealth gap, that's what it is. They convince you that equality is your solution. Well, they're feeding you a fantasy that has never been in existence in this country since the country was founded. It has never happened. And I'm not saying it can't happen. Maybe a miracle will occur one day, but it hasn't even come close to ever happening to this point. Now, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. Also, the allblackagenda.com, that URL is on the screen because we actually have solutions that actually work. In the Black Business School, we are world leading experts at solving the racial wealth gap. And we do it one family at a time, one person at a time. We're not trying to solve problems for every Black person on the planet because some of these fools, we can't talk to them. They don't want to listen. They're too brainwashed. But for those of you that want solutions that actually work, that are scientifically proven, take a look at the allblackagenda.com. Also, text the word Boyce to 31996. Please text the word Boyce to 31996 if you'd like to get notifications whenever I go live, things like that. We keep it real on this podcast, and we give you honest truth and break down things. We also don't insult your intelligence. We're not going to try to tell you to get your booty to the polls and start rapping to get your attention. We're going to actually just talk to you about ways to actually solve problems. So here's what's interesting. Another thing that they mentioned in this very good article from Brookings.edu. This is no disrespect to the people that wrote this article at all. I just wanted to point out some of that white liberal Democratic Party language that tends to be used. And this is not me saying that these are bad people, but it's me saying that we've supported these people. We give them our vote in every election. We do everything we can to keep them in power. Yet they haven't been able to solve this problem. They haven't even tried. They don't come close to it. You had an election just now where neither Democratic Party candidate, Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, ever said the word reparations, not even once. They never said the word reparations once in public, and that was deliberate. Because if you really want to talk about what's going to solve the wealth gap, well, maybe you could start by giving back all the money that was stolen from Black people. Here they write in this article, they said, you had 246 years of chattel slavery, followed by congressional mismanagement of the Freedmen's Bank, which left 61,144 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874. $3 million in 1874. If I do my math right, it's about whatever 60 or 70 times that amount right now, right? So you're talking about a couple $100 million, but really you're talking about billions of dollars, trillions of dollars of economic value stolen from Black people. They mentioned the violent massacre decimating Tulsa's Greenwood district in 1921 and discriminatory policies throughout the 20th century, including the Jim Crow era's Black codes, strictly limiting opportunity in many southern states, the GI Bill, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Act's exemption of domestic agriculture and service occupations, and redlining. And that doesn't include things like the Biden crime bill and mass incarceration, which took fathers out of the home, which ultimately undermined the infrastructure of the Black family all across this country, which right there, probably cost you another 2 or 3, 4, 5 trillion dollars in potential wealth, because it's much harder for a family to make money or to build wealth when you ain't even got a daddy in the house to protect the children. So if you ever want to have a real conversation about this, then let's have the real conversation. But the reason we don't have a real conversation is because they're not ready to have that real conversation. They don't want to have that real conversation. So I read this article. It's right here at Brookings.edu. There's more that they talk about here. By the way, the title of the article is Examining the Black-White Wealth Gap, if you want to look it up. There's another point that I found that I thought was really interesting. This is amongst Black people who actually are in the top 10% of income. They said for those in the top 10% of income, which is the only 3.6% of all Black people are in the top 10% of income, the racial wealth gap is still quite large. Median net worth for white families in this income group is 1.7 million versus 343,000 for Black families. So there is a wealth gap at every income level, going all the way down to high school graduates. Derek Hamilton and Sandy Darity, two very intelligent guys. Derek Hamilton was involved in the creation of Ice Cube's contract with Black America, if I'm not mistaken. They said here that white families receive much larger inheritances on average than black families. And Darity and Hamilton conclude that inheritances and other forms of intergenerational transfer, quote, account for more of the racial wealth gap than any other demographic and socioeconomic indicators. So the inheritance piece is very, very important, which is why, as a person who's interested in solutions, not just feel good political talk, I want to make sure that you leave an inheritance to your kids. You can get started with that just by making sure you at least have life insurance in place. Be careful with those student loans. Student loan debt is one of the biggest drivers of the racial wealth gap. That's why many educated black people can't build wealth. They have a lot of education, so they have higher incomes, but they're not building wealth because they borrowed $200,000 to get a degree from a university, which was actually a transfer of wealth from the hands of black people to the hands of white people. But imagine if black people actually owned and ran institutions. If you want to know why I created the Black Business School, for example, is because I said, what if black people ran these universities? And if we're going to go in debt to go get a degree, what if we were in debt to a black institution instead of a white one? Not to say that that's any better, not to say that I believe anybody should put you in debt, but at least you wouldn't be transferring all of your family wealth, all your intergenerational wealth, every opportunity you have to actually build an asset, transferring that literally into the hands of white people who don't even want to hire black people. These universities don't hire black professors. A lot of them don't. In fact, many HBCUs, if you go to the business school or the computer science department, they don't have any African American faculty. They just don't. Go look it. Go look. Don't ask for my verification on this. Like, go verify this yourself. Many HBCUs do not hire the black people or African Americans, foundational black Americans, for business schools and or for the sciences. And these PhDs exist. These professors are out there. They just don't want to hire them for various reasons. So they'll. When I went to interview at Howard University for a position in the finance department, I was interviewed by a Chinese man, and this Chinese man was one of the key deciders in whether or not I would be a fit for their African American students. So what I would just say to you in general is that this wealth gap is persistent because the opportunity to build wealth is sort of being sucked out of you when you're not even looking. When you have income, that's an opportunity to capitalize that income and actually build a capital base for your family. That's your chance to have an endowment. That's your chance to actually change the game. But what occurs is that, number one, you don't have a culture that really values wealth building as a core fundamental value. You don't have a culture that is built on heavy institution building. Your culture aims straight for the bottom of the barrel. Your culture pushes you to go get the job. And remember, I told you, if you think about capitalism, think about it as a room where you got two sections of the room. You got the room where the owners live or the owners stay, and you got the part of the room where the workers stay. The workers are the mules. The workers are the ones who support capitalism. The owners are the ones who benefit from it. Talking about people who own shares of stock, who own property, and who own businesses. Well, your culture pushes you to the side of the room of the worker. Tell me, answer this question in the chat. When you grew up and your family talked about making money, was most of the conversation about buying stocks and bonds and real estate and starting businesses, or did the conversation center around filling out job applications? Was there more talk about jobs, or was there more talk about ownership? Which one did you have in your household? In my household, everybody talked about getting a job. So the thing that's interesting about this is that when you talk about this racial wealth gap and you look at culture, you have to first ask yourself, what are you aiming for? Are you aiming for the top of the barrel, or are you aiming for the bottom? Well, 9 times out of 10, you're going to kind of get what you aim for. So if you're aiming for the worst, then you're going to get the worst. Well, if you're aiming to be in the working class or the poor class or whatever, or if you're listening to music that's pushing a culture of financial irresponsibility, or if you are constantly being pushed to a job application instead of being pushed to form an LLC, well, then you're going to end up exactly where you're aiming, exactly where you're aiming. So the secret that I found for people that actually elevate and ascend the wealth ladder in America, that actually solve the wealth gap problem in their family, is first of all, they start off aiming for the top. They get their kids invested in stock at the age of 5. They start talking to the kids about starting businesses when they're in the 3rd grade. They start working to build up an asset base so their kids can make a down payment and buy their first home in their 20s, maybe even sooner than that. And these individuals are the ones who tend to rise to the top. These are the ones who actually solve the wealth gap problem. So the wealth gap problem in itself, if you're looking to solve this individually or as a family, it is very easy to solve. It is very easy to solve. But if you're solving it as a community, if you're trying to figure out how to get 40 million black people to rise up the ladder, I don't know how to solve that problem because I don't have the power to do it. I don't control the media. I can't stop rappers from rapping about being financially irresponsible. Creating a bunch of babies mamas so that you go broke paying child support, or having a bunch of baby daddies so that you end up broke because you can't afford to take care of all them kids by yourself, or spending all your money on a Gucci bag and a Louis purse and some red bottom shoes when you haven't even bought a single asset for your children. I can't change that culture. I can't talk to everybody. I can only talk to you. But if you want to solve that problem yourself and you want to close the racial wealth gap on your own, that is really, really, really easy to do. And you can do it in less than a generation. One example is if you go to the allblackagenda.com, I have something there that you can feel free to check out called the $5 a day investment plan. It's the $5 a day investment plan shows how a regular person can invest $5 a day in the stock market and literally pick stocks at random and actually have more wealth than the average white person by the time they're done. By the time you leave this earth, you will be leaving your children in a position of financial strength, and it's pretty straightforward to do. So feel free to go take a look at that. And one more URL I'll just give you guys if you're interested in stuff that's out here is the Black Wealth Calendar. So if you'd like to get a Black Wealth Calendar where we have Black Business School, Black Wealth Principles on the calendar every month, feel free to go to blackwealthcalendar.com. There's a URL right there. All right, so do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when we go live because they don't always notify you. So hit the notification bell and you can actually text the word Boyce to 31996 so we can stay in touch. I saw this article, I was reading it, I thought it was good, so I thought I'd share it with you, and I hope that this helped you in terms of reframing how you think about things when it comes to this wealth game. They're going to be talking about this. The so-called gurus are going to be confused about this for the next 50 years. In the year 2050, there are going to be articles written saying, why is it that the racial wealth gap is the same in 2050 that it was in the year 2020? They are going to be baffled by this for a very long time, but you don't have to be baffled because the solution is right in front of you. But the thing about it, the thing I found over time is that intention is everything. Intention is everything. If you want to find the solution, then you'll find the solution. But America does not want to find a solution because America is not looking for a solution. If you go back, for example, I remember when I used to get phone calls from the Obama administration to talk about various things going on with, black economics or whatever, and they never wanted my opinion. They always wanted to tell me what their opinion was, which was deeply offensive because I was smarter than most of those people in the White House, at least on this particular issue. But what was interesting was whenever they would have a meeting to talk about solving the black economic problems, they would never bring in leading economists. They would never bring in people like Sandy Darity or Dr. Julianne Malveaux or Dr. Claude Anderson, people who could solve this problem in their sleep. All they would do is they would bring Al Sharpton in for a photo op so that it could appear that they were actually trying to solve the problem, or they bring in some other black leader, so-called black leader, fake black leader, or a member of the Congressional Black Caucus to do another photo op. And the reason they didn't solve the problem was because they never really wanted to solve the problem. They never really wanted to try. It's like when I tell my girls, I say, look, if a man really likes you and you call him and he never has time to talk to you, that means that man don't like you. If he says, well, baby, I would come see you, but I can't because of this, and this. I said, you need to read the writing on the wall. He can't solve that problem because he doesn't want to solve that problem. Intentionality is everything. So, two areas, particularly in the areas of economics and education, the intentionality when it comes to black people is heavily slanted by the white supremacist ideology that basically says Negroes are exactly where they're supposed to be. There's no desire to elevate the position of the black man or the black woman in America because they don't believe that you should have a higher position in America. There's no desire to fix these problems. They're always going to say we can't educate a black child. Well, why should they want to educate a black child? They're making a ton of money from the miseducation of black children. All they need is for your little black boy or little black daughter to show up, put their butt in the seat, and they get a check from the government. They get a bigger check for every child they have in that school. That's why they don't want the problem to be solved, because when they solve the problem, they're cutting right into their own meal ticket. If you don't believe me, go look at how many schools there are out here that make billions of dollars creating textbooks and all kinds of supplies and meals and all kinds of educational equipment just so they can pretend to educate black kids. So there's wealth being built in the pretending. There's money being made in the game. There is a whole industry built around black suffering. There are people that make money because you are where you are. If the problem goes away, then you can't make money pretending to solve the problem. There is no there is no profit in the cure. There's only profit in the treatment. So they're going to always want to treat these issues as if they're unsolvable. But I'm trying to tell you that there is a cure out there, but you got to go find it off the grid. You ain't going to find it in mainstream media. Because this article that was written in Brookings is similar to an article I read in the Washington Post. They're going to be writing articles like this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because there's only profit in the treatment. There's never any profit in the cure. Okay, guys. So, by the way, if you want to go hang out every week, Dr. Claude Anderson and I we do Powernomics Masterclass. We record everything. We get together and discuss Powernomics concepts. So if you'd like to learn from Dr. Claude Anderson, who is really, really good at what he does, feel free to join us at powernomicsmasterclass.com. And also, if you have children that you'd like to expose to wealth concepts, feel free to take a look at our financial workbooks and flashcards. And there's the URL, financialworkbooks.com. That's financialworkbooks.com. All right, guys. So I'm out of here. Take care. And I hope that this was helpful to you. Thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.